So I'm not quite sure if this is going to be the fastest Vipcoo H3 in the world, but that's exactly what we're going to be shooting for. I currently know of one person that has one of these bikes clocked at 70 miles per hour. It's I-34 Ghost down in Miami. He has a Moxon controller and a Morge 30 amp hour battery, and I'm sure that thing's pushing well over 20 kilowatts. My goal is to clock a slightly higher top speed at a fraction of the price. Just a quick recap on this bike in case you're new to this channel. It's just got a custom plastic set from Vipcoo, 48 tooth rear sprocket, and a fresh set of white Supermoto wheels with Kenda street tires from the Watch Shop. Powertrain wise, it is completely stock, but we're going to be changing that today. One of the most common questions I get on this channel with the Vipcoo videos is this a far driver controller and how do you tune it? And the short answer is it's not a far driver and I have zero idea how to tune this controller. That's actually why we're swapping it out today. Now let's take a closer look at this. KZW048050A. What I gather from that is it's a 48 volt controller with a 50 amp current limit. Actually, it says maximum current 55 plus or minus 1 amp, which is simply not enough for the power that I'm looking for. So I really don't see the point of trying to tune the stock controller. I just pulled the phase wires and the hall sensor connector through this tunnel right here. Just completely pull that out before we try to remove the motor. And then there are just 4 Allen bolts on the bottom side of the swing arm to take it off. Super simple. That has got to be the quickest I've ever been able to remove any motor from any bike. So the motor that I decided to go with is a Socian FW23 by Voltron Watts. I got this from the Watch Shop. This one is specifically meant for a Tudio Soleo, but it's actually the same exact dimensions as the stock motor. But this one is noticeably heavier because obviously it's got heavier duty components and the phase wires are so much beefier than the stock ones. Just look at the difference in the size of the phase wires. Obviously, the Socian motor is going to deliver a lot more power than the stock motor. We're not really going to be pushing it to its limits though. I'm probably going to shoot for something over 14 kilowatts. I also went with a hall sensor version since that's what's compatible with the controller that we're going to be using, which I'll go over next. If you want to get more information on the Voltron FW23, make sure you check out the Watch Shop. I'll have a link to their website in the description of this video. They carry all sorts of different style pit bikes along with upgraded components for them. You can also get yourself 5% off anything from the Watch Shop by using discount code PAT Outdoors. So it appears that the stock hardware is just 1 or 2 millimeters too long and it bottoms out in the motor. So I'm just going to be adding 2 washers per bolt just to make sure that everything's torqued down correctly. What I'm doing now is tightening up the chain tension by pulling these back on both sides evenly, just to make sure that the rear wheel is tracking perfectly straight. And then we're going to torque down the rear axle. The chain tension on these bikes can be a little bit tighter than most dirt bikes because the motor is actually mounted in the swing arm, so the slack doesn't change under compression, kind of similar to the ETM RTR. Damn, I just realized there's 2 ways to mount this motor. Since the phase wires and the hall sensor connector are actually on the shorter side compared to the stock motor, I want this motor to be rotated clockwise. So I'm gonna redo this whole install real quick and make sure that this side is mounted at the bottom, just so we can have the phase wires facing the frame. And just like that, we're able to fix it in just a few minutes. Here's exactly how I wanted it oriented. I wanted the phase wires to be facing this hole on the back side of the frame. Hopefully there's enough slack for the controller to be mounted in this area. It's definitely a tight fit since they're much larger phase wires, but it is cutting it close. I also ordered something else from the watch shop to add a little bit of purple up front to match the new Socian motor in the back. So I got myself a set of the black front suspension fork tubes with the oil slick down tubes, which I think looks super freaking dope. Came with some plain black fork guards. The Pro Taper bar and pad are actually gonna go on my Yasma IN10 project, so we'll save that for a later video. Also included the mount for the front brake hose and some decals. This is actually my favorite one here. I work so my pit bike can have a better life. True statement. Turns out there were some slight differences in dimensions with the fork tubes, and I had to mess around with a couple different combinations of wheel spacers in order to get the supermotor to align correctly in between the fork, and for the disc brake rotor to not have any sort of drag. Pretty simple to figure out though. Dude, hell yeah. I think I may have gotten a little bit more than what I placed an order for. Thank you, EMF Cole. And we got so much stuff going on, I don't even know where to start. Let's just go from this side. So this is a voltmeter with a keyed ignition switch, an EMF Suron style throttle. It's actually got a metal housing. They offer it in multiple colors. Far driver ND72 450. So this is able to do 200 line amps, 450 phase. So we should be able to touch at least 14 kilowatts. Mounts for the display. This is the Chowji display. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but I just wanted to try something different. I've been using the DKD in the past. Got the EMF Chowji display harness. It's supposed to be plug and play for their far driver kit. 2 sets of grips, black and gray. I'm probably gonna go with the gray Pro Tapers to match the gray on the plastic. Park switch, regen, mode switching, and a 3-speed switch. Also got a EMF far driver adapter harness. I'm gonna have to mock up all this stuff plugged together and then we'll go over it. But his harness actually came pre-labeled, as you can see. Should be pretty easy to figure out. So what I like about the EMF stuff is he has a QR code on every single package. So if you want further clarification on how to install it, he's got the link for his installation video through his YouTube channel. Got some decals and some keychains. And then these 3 things I think are completely separate from the far driver kit that I ordered. 12 volt LED Baja headlight, 12 volt power source using some AA batteries so I don't have to wire in any sort of voltage step down converter to run any sort of 12 volt accessories, and then on off switch for the 12 volt kit with a headlight. I might actually use this for my Tudio since that bike never came with a headlight. I don't think I'm going to use it on this bike just because this H3 already comes with an LED headlight with turn signals, tail light, turn signals, horn, and I kind of don't want to lose that. So I'm going to try to make that work with a far driver. This is actually the first time I ordered a far driver controller from EMF's website, and it actually simplified the process since everything's already pre-wired to work with each other. And the listing has a bunch of drop-down menus so you can kind of build your own kit. If you guys want to get more information on any of the parts that I'm using for this project, I'll have everything linked in the description below. Now, after quickly reviewing the stock wiring harness, I think the only wires that we need to save to keep the factory lighting system working These 2 wires going to the brake switch, and then these 3 small wires going to this black connector, which are black, red, and white. I'm assuming this is the power source for the whole lighting system, and then this is going to be a brake signal switch. So I'm probably going to cut the 2 connectors off the stock harness so we can reuse them for the far driver setup, but I got to do a little bit more research on how I'm going to have that configured. But right now I want to prioritize mounting the 72450 in the frame. The biggest hurdle right now is having these phase wires bolted on the controller, since there's not enough slack to have it mounted on the top side. I'm just going to continue to remove everything that we're no longer going to be using. So it's just the stock throttle, the display, the ignition switch up top, and anything else wiring related to make space for the new stuff. Man, I thought this was like a lock-on grip. It's got like a fake Allen bolt on the end. I don't even care. It's all gonna be replaced with some Pro Taper stuff anyway. I mean, far drivers are pretty simple to install once you've done a couple brushless motor kits. It's pretty simple. Everything is color-coded. Blue, green, and yellow are obviously for the 3 phase wires going to your motor. And then black and red are for the battery lead connector, whichever one matches your battery. And then this is just the main harness. Now this part's actually my main concern, is how we're gonna mount this controller on the frame. I really don't feel like extending these phase wires. Now keep in mind, this Socin motor is designed for a Tudio Soleil, which has the motor mounted on the bottom of the frame, and then the controller is right here. So it really doesn't need that much wiring, at least for a Tudio. Yeah, I gotta figure out which way I wanna mount it. Preferably I wanted it facing this way, but there's really just not enough slack in the phase wires. And that's definitely not something that I wanna put too much stress on. So I might end up mounting it this way. Main question, is it gonna fit inside the covers though? I don't know. All right, slight change of scenery. We decided to move the Vipcoo over to the other garage where I have all the other electric bit bikes, including the broken Ultra B, which I definitely have to spend some time on this week. Now for the battery, I'm just using a Amorge 72 volt 20 amp hour lithium battery pack. This one's designed specifically for a Tudio Soleil as well. I used this exact battery to go 72 miles an hour on my Tudio and 70 miles an hour on my Yasma IN10. But since we upgraded the IN10 battery, we're gonna be transferring this over to this bike. It's got a peak discharge rating of 250 amps, 250 line amps continuous. So it has a peak output of 18,000 watts. Now, I often get requests to send a link for the batteries that I'm using for whatever project, and unfortunately, Amorge doesn't work that way. You have to send an inquiry to info@amorge.com to let them know what type of bike you have, what kind of cells you want to use on your battery, BMS, dimensions you need, if you need a custom battery. They carry all sorts of bolt-on batteries for the Yasma, the Tudio, Surons. I even had them make a battery for my YZ250 and my ATV. I have zero affiliation with Amorge. I pay out of pocket for all my batteries. I just really like how they make their batteries, and they make some really high output stuff. Like the battery on my Yasma is about to peak out at like 28,000 watts. One downside is it takes a little while to get your battery. It can be as soon as 6 weeks if you do air shipping, or more than 2 months if you do sea shipping like I do. But if you are interested in getting a custom battery made, make sure you check out Amorge. Obviously, we're not gonna have the controller sitting on the battery. We're gonna have it mounted up here. Just wanted to show you the clearances around the Tudio battery. It almost seems like it is meant for this bike. Like, look at how snug the tolerances are all around. Like, there's not even enough room for this battery to slide around or shift whenever you're riding it. But I do have to cut this bracket off from the front plate. I think this is meant to hold the stock battery down, but it's gonna make contact with the front of the battery if we leave it on. Grease the edge of the padding here, but really doesn't matter too much. I'm probably gonna end up sanding this plate down and painting it just to prevent any sort of corrosion long term. But just cutting that bracket off makes a Tudio battery a perfect fit. I think I finally figured out how I want it to be configured. Luckily, everything is labeled, so I just started plugging one connector at a time. Starting with the EMF throttle on the right side, just hooked up to throttle, black, red, and green. Keyed ignition switch has 2 connectors, and I have that plugged into the EMF plug and play far driver harness, labeled voltmeter and key. And then I have the mode switching button, which is currently hooked up to the 3-speed connector. I also got myself one of these 3-speed switches, but it seems unnecessary since we have a display that shows what speed we're in. So the mode switch button seems to make more sense to work with. Park switch, hooked up to park switch. The Bluetooth dongle already came connected to the far driver harness. Then I'm gonna have the display on the center, of course, which is connected to the display harness, which plugs to the brown wire going to the main harness, labeled 1-line display. And then the other plug goes to the EMF PNP harness, wires labeled display. There are these 3 connectors which we'll likely not be using for today's project. These are for the turn signals and for the headlight, if you want the indicators to work on the display. And then on the left side, I'm just gonna be adding a regen button, which is connected to regen. It's a little bit crowded here on the right side, but I think it's gonna work. Jesus Christ, y'all hear that? I always have a hard time with installing grips. And I saw my buddy Elmer use some zip ties for installing grips on his hay bike Villain. Didn't know what that was. Oh. Wow, I cannot believe how well that worked out. So just to be completely clear, this is not how I'm gonna have the controller mounted. I just have it mocked up with some zip ties. To give you guys an idea of how it's gonna be mounted, I ordered a Econic Cycles 450 far driver bracket meant for a Razor, which is not gonna be here for another couple days. So this is just what we're gonna have to do for now. What I'm thinking is cutting these tabs off and then mounting the Econic bracket on top, putting the bolts through on all 4 corners, and then just sandwiching the frame, which should keep the controller fully secure. But I am gonna have to add a few washers on all the mounting points for the plastics just to make sure that it clears. I actually really like this display bracket from EMF. Gives you a lot of options as far as where to mount it on the handlebar, and you can also adjust the angle, so you can just reposition the display whichever way you want. But unfortunately, I don't think I have the right thread pitch bolts for the back side of this display, so I'm gonna have to run to a hardware store before I can mount this permanently. And here's a closer look at how I have the wiring routed. I pretty much have the far driver harness routed to the top side, majority of the harness up here, including the power cable, the charge port for the battery as well. I also still have to figure out which charge port I want to use that I want to mount on the side of the plastics. The only connector that I have on the bottom side is obviously the motor hall sensor, which happens to have just enough slack from the far driver harness. And then I have the display wiring going through the top where the original ignition hole was. Since I'm going to have the display mounted up here, it's not gonna tug on it when I turn left and right. I just wanna figure out what this USB cable does. I'm not sure if there's any sort of like tuning function with it, or if it's simply just a charge port. That'll determine where I wanna mount it. All right, moment of truth. I have not keyed this thing on yet. All right, well, it's showing 83 volts on the voltmeter. I did not realize I was gonna say EMF when I turned it on. That's pretty freaking cool. The controller is beeping because we haven't programmed it yet. So the wiring portion of the Vipcoo H3 is all wrapped up and we are ready to program the controller. I'm actually gonna reach out to Josh Daniels over in the UK to help me set up this ND72450. Yes, I've installed quite a few of these type of controllers in the past over the years, but there's just plenty of people out there that know a lot more than I do when it comes to the tuning portion And I know Josh has plenty of experience with far driver controllers. Unfortunately, I had a technical issue with my laptop and was not able to retain any of the audio during our long video call. And I'm not about to try to explain what Josh did to tune my bike step by step because it's just simply way over my head. But what I'm gonna do is put my tune up on screen so you can scroll through the settings bit by bit so you can get an idea of what was done to my bike. Now this tune is meant specifically for my bike with my motor, controller, battery combination with my switches and my throttle. So if you have any sort of differences with your setup, it is likely not gonna work for your bike. Please contact him if you want further tuning details. This is freaking crazy. I don't even think I've had any bike that had that much tire expansion. Super excited to take this thing out and give it a run. Don't have the hardware for the display yet, so I just have it ghetto zip tied right now. Don't worry, when we get the bike back to the other house, we'll get everything bolted up, and I still got to trim the side cover so we can get those to clear the controller. I'm also still waiting for the controller bracket, so I still need that to come in before we finalize everything over here. The Chowji display also needs to be programmed. I have to reach out to EMF Cole to see what I have to input in order to get everything to read correctly. I just don't know how to use one of these things. For the meantime, I'm just gonna rely on the Far Driver app and the GPS speedometer so we can at least measure speed and just make sure that the drivetrain portion of this bike is at least working correctly. I haven't even wired up any of the lights yet. We'll focus on all those little details on the finishing stage next week. So it's been raining for a few hours, but it stopped a little bit ago. The ground's still wet here and there, so I'm probably gonna take it easy at first. Not sure if I'm just gonna jump straight into a all-out max speed run. We are just gonna jump into mode 3 though, since I can't really get this mode button to work correctly. So I have it stuck on mode 3. Since we're shooting for max speed, I don't really see the point of testing out the other modes anyway. I haven't played with the regen settings yet, so we'll test that out next time. But I am super happy that Josh got the reverse working. So this park button, instead of it putting us in park, it puts us in reverse. And as soon as you let go, it just goes back to normal. We have it set at 800 RPM, which I think is actually pretty fast for a reverse. Probably just gonna go for a short ride since I completely forgot to add Loctite to my Socin motor, which you should always do to all F22 or F23 motors whenever you install it. All right, screw it. Holy shit! Dude, this thing goes 70 miles per hour uphill. Just one long pull like that's got me a little bit shaky. Now, due to the taller gearing, it's not my torquiest bike ever, but it's definitely got a lot of mid-range and high-range power. Whew. This thing is crazy. We definitely have to upgrade the brakes ASAP. Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. All right, take care. Now, is this the fastest Vipcoo H3 in the world? I actually have zero idea. There's not a lot of people that have these bikes, but I'm certainly shooting for that title. Oh my God. What have we created? This thing is freaking dangerous. Thank you for everybody that helped me with this project. Shout out to EMF Cole, Kyle over at the Watch Shop, and of course, Josh Daniels. If any of you guys are interested in getting a Far Driver tuning service done, make sure you hit him up at Casper the Stupid Ghost on YouTube or on TikTok. And of course, if you're interested in checking out any of the parts we used for this project, I have everything linked in the description below. You can also get yourself 5% off anything from the Watch Shop using discount code PAT Outdoors. I am gonna work on finding a safer and wider space for us to truly test the real absolute top speed of this thing. I've got a feeling it's gonna be around the 77 to 78 mile an hour mark, but we will just have to see. If you guys enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe to this channel. But this is gonna be it for today. Thank you for watching.